Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and hearing the same message everywhere. The stores are closed, not for an hour, not for the afternoon, closed. Nobody knows exactly when they'll reopen. Some people would panic immediately, others would assume everything will be fine. But within a few hours, most people would realize something important. The things they thought mattered most often aren't the things they need first. Because when stores disappear from the equation, priorities change fast. The question isn't, what would I like to have? The question becomes, what would I wish I had bought yesterday? And the first item surprises many people. Water, not food. Water. Food is what people usually think about first. Movies teach us that. Television teaches us that. The internet teaches us that. But real life is different. Most people can go far longer without food than they imagine. Water is a completely different story. Drinking, cooking, cleaning, washing, flushing. The average household uses far more water than it realizes. That's why bottled water disappears quickly whenever uncertainty appears. People suddenly recognize how dependent they are on something they've always assumed would be available. And once shelves are empty, the realization arrives too late. The second item is medicine, not complicated medicine, basic medicine, pain relief, cold and flu remedies, allergy tablets, bandages, antiseptic cream, the kinds of things people never think about until they need them. That's the problem. Nobody plans headaches, nobody schedules illness, nobody expects minor injuries, yet those things continue happening whether stores are open or closed. Imagine getting a severe headache and discovering the medicine cabinet is empty. Normally it's a simple trip to the store. Now it isn't. That's why basic medical supplies consistently become valuable long before people expect them to. The third item is batteries. Most households own batteries. The issue is quantity. A flashlight needs batteries. A radio needs batteries. Emergency lights need batteries. And suddenly those 4 spare batteries in a drawer don't seem like much. What's interesting is that batteries rarely matter during normal life. People forget they're there until electricity becomes uncertain. Then they become one of the most useful items in the house. That's why battery shelves often change quickly whenever people start preparing for disruptions. Not because batteries are exciting, because they solve problems. The fourth item is shelf-stable food. Not expensive emergency food. Not survival rations. Simple pantry foods. Rice, beans, pasta, peanut butter, oats, crackers, tuna. Foods that don't depend on refrigeration. Foods that don't demand immediate consumption. Foods that quietly sit on shelves until needed. Most people underestimate these foods because they're ordinary. Ordinary things rarely attract attention until they're unavailable. That's when ordinary suddenly becomes valuable. And the fifth item on this list might be one of the most overlooked purchases people make. A flashlight. Not a phone flashlight. A real flashlight. Because darkness changes everything. Walking through familiar rooms becomes difficult. Finding items becomes frustrating. Simple tasks take longer. People often assume they'll use their phone. Then they realize every minute of light drains communication. That's when dedicated lighting starts looking like a much better investment. And we're only getting started, because the next items become valuable for reasons most people never see coming. The sixth item is cash. This surprises many people. After all, cash feels outdated. Cards are easier, phones are easier, digital payments are everywhere, until they aren't. If systems stop functioning normally, electronic payments become far less reliable. Stores may remain open temporarily, but payment systems can become limited. ATMs can become inaccessible, networks can experience interruptions, and suddenly people discover they have money, but not necessarily usable money. That's why cash remains valuable despite modern technology, not because it's old-fashioned, because it's independent. The seventh item is a manual can opener. This sounds almost ridiculous. Until it happens, people stock up on canned food. Their shelves look fantastic. Then they discover their electric can opener isn't much use without power. It's one of those mistakes that's obvious afterward, but invisible beforehand. The solution costs very little, yet thousands of people overlook it completely, and when they finally need it, they wish they'd thought of it sooner. The eighth item is hygiene supplies. Soap, toilet paper, toothpaste, shampoo, cleaning products. These don't sound exciting. Nobody makes dramatic videos about them, yet when stores become unavailable, these are some of the first things people miss. Because hygiene isn't optional. Daily routines continue. People still need to wash, clean, maintain basic comfort. The moment those supplies run low, normal life starts feeling less normal very quickly. That's why experienced households often focus on everyday essentials rather than exotic emergency gear. The basics matter more. The ninth item is a way to charge devices. People don't appreciate electricity until they start losing access to it. Phones become information centers, communication devices, navigation tools, emergency contacts, and none of those functions matter once the battery reaches zero. That's why power banks have become increasingly valuable, not because they're exciting, because they extend options. Every extra hour of battery life provides flexibility, and flexibility becomes extremely valuable when stores aren't available. The 10th item is warm clothing and blankets. People focus on food constantly, then forget comfort. Comfort matters a lot. Cold nights feel longer, sleep becomes harder, patience disappears faster. A good blanket solves problems immediately. The same applies to warm clothing, extra layers, sleeping bags. These things look boring in a store. They don't look boring at 2 o'clock in the morning when temperatures start dropping. The 11th item is a radio. Many younger viewers have never owned one. Why would they? Phones provide information instantly, normally. But radios offer something valuable: independence. They continue functioning when other systems struggle. They provide updates, news, weather information, situational awareness. People often discover the value of radios only after losing access to alternatives, and that's exactly why they belong on this list. The 12th and final item isn't something you can buy tomorrow, it's a plan. Who needs checking on? How will supplies be used? What happens if conditions last longer than expected? People often assume they'll figure everything out later, then later arrives, and stress makes decisions harder. Households with plans aren't necessarily better prepared because they own more supplies. They're better prepared because they already made decisions. That's an enormous advantage. Now step back and look at the entire list: water, medicine, batteries, shelf-stable food, flashlights, cash, hygiene supplies, charging solutions, warmth, information, a plan. Notice something? Nothing here is glamorous. Nothing is particularly expensive. Most of these items are ordinary. And that's exactly the point. People imagine preparation as something dramatic. Huge stockpiles, massive storage rooms, thousands of dollars worth of equipment. Real life usually looks different. Most problems are surprisingly ordinary. You don't miss luxury items first. You miss practical items first. The things you use every day without noticing. The things you assume will always be available. The things you never think about replacing until they're gone. That's what makes store closures so interesting. They reveal dependencies, not weaknesses. Dependencies. They show people what they actually rely on: electricity, water, transportation, supply chains, distribution networks, thousands of systems quietly working together every day. Most of the time, those systems function so smoothly nobody notices them. Then one part slows down, and suddenly everyone notices. That's why the smartest preparation isn't usually extreme. It's practical. A slightly deeper pantry, extra batteries, basic medicine, stored water, small adjustments, small solutions, small advantages. Those things remove enormous amounts of stress later. And stress matters, because stressed people make rushed decisions. They buy impulsively, they overreact, they focus on the wrong priorities. Prepared people aren't necessarily calmer because they're smarter. They're calmer because they've removed uncertainty. They already know where the flashlight is. They already know where the batteries are. They already know what they'll eat tomorrow. That certainty creates confidence, and confidence changes everything. The most interesting lesson from store closures isn't about shortages, it's about awareness. People suddenly realize which items truly matter, not the items advertisers tell them matter, not the items influencers tell them matter, the items that genuinely solve problems. Water solves problems, medicine solves problems, light solves problems, food solves problems, warmth solves problems. Communication solves problems. That's why these 12 items matter, because they continue providing value when options become limited. And if stores close tomorrow, these are the items most people would wish they'd bought today.